Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling defeated, even though you said everything you wanted to say? Do you feel that tightness in your chest when every word seems to push you further from your own power? Maybe you're surrounded by those who speak loudly, interrupt constantly, ridicule others, and fill spaces with arrogance masquerading as confidence. Perhaps you've believed that staying quiet means weakness, that not defending yourself equals surrender, that remaining unreactive means losing. But what if this entire belief system is a deception? What if genuine power has never resided in words, but in their strategic absence? Nietzsche, one of history's most misunderstood philosophers, recognized something that few dare acknowledge. Those who speak excessively reveal too much. Those desperate to convince others are already disadvantaged. Society conditions us to fight, explain ourselves, defend our positions as though every discussion were a war for truth. But nature suggests a different approach, one more subtle, more devastating, and infinitely more intelligent. Nietzsche understood that silence isn't merely the lack of noise, but an overwhelming presence. Silence unsettles, it destabilizes, it compels others to confront themselves. This message is for you who constantly feels overlooked, overshadowed, invalidated. For you who exits conversations feeling unheard. For you who's exhausted from being the easy target, the agreeable one, the peacekeeper, while others exploit your composure. Maybe you've mistaken your silence for surrender. Today, I'll demonstrate that silence can become your most formidable weapon. True victory doesn't come from winning arguments, but from never needing to engage in them. Prepare to view silence differently, not as a lack of response, but as the ultimate response. Why do we feel compelled to respond, rebut, correct, and prove our rightness? Because we've been programmed to believe truth must be defended relentlessly, that remaining silent allows others to win. But Nietzsche saw this as evidence of our deepest weakness, the fear of appearing weak. Behind this fear lurks the ego, fragile and unable to withstand questioning, confusing disagreement with attack, transforming conversations into battlefields. Nietzsche observed that most people don't seek truth when arguing, they seek power. They attempt to reinforce beliefs, not because they're solid, but because if shaken, everything crumbles. When you feel compelled to justify yourself, you've already entered their game and lost. The very need to justify shows you're still trapped in the desire for acceptance and validation. This is what Nietzsche called herd morality, behavior of those living under others' expectations, seeking to be perceived as good, correct, just. True strength lies not in convincing others, but in not needing to do so. It means holding your vision despite laughter, criticism, and rejection. It means being misunderstood yet remaining unshaken. If this content resonates with you, please click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Nietzsche didn't write for the weak. He wrote for the few with courage to look within, confront their misery, and transform it into strength. For him, ordinary humans live trapped by conventions and the need for applause. But there exists another type of being, rare, dangerous, free. The Übermensch doesn't live reactively. He shapes the world in his image, often in complete silence. He doesn't need to win debates or engage in emotional games. He observes, understands, and carefully chooses when to speak, and more importantly, when to remain silent. The Übermensch understands that silence is a form of language that doesn't try to convince, it imposes presence. His silence isn't empty, it's authority. While others shout, he commands respect with his gaze. While others explain, he observes and reveals weaknesses through his calm. This silence isn't passivity. It's absolute control of one's energy. It's strategic economy. The Übermensch knows every spoken word is a revealed move, every emotional reaction an exposure of weakness. He remains quiet, not because he has nothing to say, but because he doesn't need to say anything. Silence acts as a mirror, reflecting what many find unbearable. When you choose not to react, you force others to hear their own voice, confront their arguments without external resistance. This destabilizes because most people don't speak to express themselves. They speak to protect themselves, convince themselves, hide their emptiness. Without your response, their disguise falls away. Social psychology confirms that in confrontational situations, silence is perceived as judgment. The speaker begins feeling exposed and insecure. Why? Because without your reaction, they lose narrative control. The human brain enters alert mode. The amygdala activates fear and anxiety responses. The other person projects their fears onto you. Is he judging me? Did he notice my insecurity? Does he know I'm bluffing? Silence has devastating effects on manipulators who depend on emotional control. When you don't react, you break the cycle and they panic, needing your response to validate their position. Now it's time to stop merely understanding silence as power and start using it strategically. Here's how to transform your silence into a precision weapon. First, be silent when everything in you screams for response. This requires strength because you'll want to react, justify, prove you're right, but that desire is poison. Second, master observation. While others talk and try filling voids with words, you listen like a hunter listening for prey. You perceive hidden fears, subtle contradictions, insecurities disguised as arrogance. Third, control timing. Learn to let silence last. Pause creates tension, and tension is power. While others wait for your reaction that never comes, they experience internal collapse. Fourth, embrace unpredictability. When you master silence, you become unpredictable. People fear what they can't predict because they lose their advantage. However, there's a dangerous form of silence, the silence of submission. This isn't the silence of strength, but of conditioning that makes you think silence is your only option. Some people exploit your calmness, your ability to overlook and avoid confrontation. Nietzsche spoke of slave morality, the value system constructed by the weak to survive. It's the morality of resignation, guilt, and being nice. An invisible code teaching you to nullify yourself while feeling virtuous about it. This submissive silence must die. In its place, the silence of presence must be born, one that doesn't bend, doesn't humiliate, doesn't apologize for existing. We've reached the final point. Understand this clearly. Silence isn't absence or emptiness. True silence is pure presence. It's mastery. It's the sign you're no longer reacting to the world. You're shaping it with your existence. Nietzsche wrote for those willing to transcend, to tear off society's imposed masks. The silence of the Übermensch isn't the silence of the oppressed or coward. It's the silence of the warrior who has won before the battle begins. Look at your life. How many times have you remained silent from fear, guilt, or not wanting to disturb? How many times have you let others decide for you? Speak for you. Trample your truth. From today, your silence needs to change its tone. It needs to stop being an escape and become an invisible declaration of authority, a boundary, an affirmation of who you are. Comment below. Choose the silence that commands respect, not just so I know you've made it this far, but to publicly affirm this commitment to yourself. Remember, the weak shout, the strong remain silent, the wise choose when to speak.